Sorry, I pretend to be tall sometimes. Thank you so much, Eli. Thank you so much, Sean. We used to have the tag men's fiction. I will say now it's just bull, which originally people don't get was bullshit, which is basically all the bullshit of toxic masculinity. Now it's just bull, and it sort of tries to be a place where all the voices can come: man, woman, female, not trans, non-binary, black, white, all over, because we all have a little bit of money in the game, and we're all just trying to figure out this world.
Woo!
Thank you. So originally, I've been stressed about this for the last couple weeks. I've been working on this, that I thought this was going to be way too dark and depressing. I only say that what I find funny, other people find sometimes depressing. But so I will.
You're in good company.
I will say, trigger warning. Sometimes I say, when people say, "Why did you laugh at that?" I say, "I laugh so I don't cry.
Yeah.
I write so I don't die." This is called "Man Turns 40, Throws Pity Party." For my 40th birthday, my wife threw me an escape room, and I ruined it by refusing to escape my bathroom. "Why do you hate me?" she said. "Why do you hate me?" I said. We'd both been drinking.
Yeah.
Her friends, that she said were my friends, had long gone home. She said I was getting meaner every year. She'd been saying that for years. I didn't really know what else to say, so I stormed out of the bathroom and ripped my shirt off and started punching myself in the eye and said, "At least I'm not actively trying to die anymore." And she said, "Exactly," and walked away. My therapist says that I have abandonment issues, and I say, "Lady, I've been trying to abandon people my whole life. I am the goddamn captain of nobody being abandoned." She says I don't understand abandonment issues. But she's also the one that's diagnosed me as PTSD, which I say is a little melodramatic even for me. The only thing traumatic I've ever known is that I had a brother who killed himself 30 years ago when I was 10. And the only thing traumatic I remember is what I don't remember, as I slept merrily away and not hurt and didn't hear the gun go off and never saw him again. My therapist says sometimes kids like me will repress things for self-preservation. And I say for 30 years, and she says sometimes for a lifetime, which is her way of making me feel better and worse at the same time. I didn't really even like my brother. He was kind of a bully. And he would call me a mama's boy and a crybaby. And he would pin me down and give me titty twisters and punch me in the nuts. And he would make me swallow his loogies. As I'm saying this, my therapist asked me, "How often was your brother abusive?" And she doesn't say sexually, but there's a tone. So I say, "It's not like he molested me." To which she just says, and writes things in her notes. These aren't all the therapists that I'm telling you about, these therapists. This is number 5 in 4 years. It's kind of like dating on Tinder. Swipe right for the therapist who will just stop asking their goddamn questions and just get to fixing what you're fixated on. My first therapist was at the ripe old age of 12, after I'd written my first full-length suicide note 2 years after my brother trying to live into his shoes. And I had cribbed liberally from Kenny Rogers' song The Gambler, which is to say, you gotta know when to hold them and know when to fold them, know when to walk away and know when to run.
Yeah.
My therapist didn't want to know anything about Kenny Rogers, though. He just wanted to blame my brother for everything. And I said, "Oh, no. I might be a mama's boy, but I've learned all about snitches and stitches." Actually, I didn't say that. I just started crying and couldn't go on. And finally, he let me go, and I never went back, and for some reason, my mother was okay with that. My most recent therapist before my current therapist used to always stop me to ask if I was writing this all down in my book. To which I would say, you remember I gave you the book I had already written the first day, and I said, please read this so I don't have to repeat all this shit. She said, fine, so why don't you write a story about me this time? So this is me writing a story about her this time. She's the only therapist I ever had who was a proud card-carrying member of the NRA. She said, guns don't kill people. People with issues like your brother killed people. Well, she also told me about how crazy her patients were and how one day they were going to come and kill her, but not before they had to pull her gun out of her cold, dead hand. Suffice to say, don't worry, she didn't murder anybody. Nobody murdered her. She just had a mental breakdown in the middle of a session and went home and never came back. And if I could ever talk to her again, I'd probably say, if I really had abandonment issues, that would have really fucked with my head. My current therapist, though, is obsessed with my mother, and not really in an Oedipal complex kind of way, more in like, how does your mother feel about all this kind of way? And does she read your stories? And I say, my mother writes me all the time to tell me how proud she is of me and how much she loves me. And she even offers to fact check my stories for free. She says, it wasn't always so depressing as you say it was. And your brother loved you, he just didn't know how to express it. And your dad loves you, even though if he's never read a story, he's very proud, even if he's never acted about it. And don't you remember how hard I tried to make everybody happy after he died? Which I tell my therapist is a bunch of bullshit, that she doesn't get it, because the moral to every story I've ever written is how I've irrevocably failed every loved one who ever tried to love me. My therapist says this is grandiose thinking. I say, no shit, but here riddled this. What do you call the clinical term for a narcissist who's convinced he can save the world by ridding himself of it? She says, I don't know. I say, I don't know either, but really the bad guy has to be right once, right? Once in a while? Actually, I don't say any of that. I just start crying and put my head down and get back on mentally on Tinder. And I'm swiping right for the therapist you don't have to pay to tell you the shit you already know. And it's like Kenny Rogers says, you gotta know when to walk away and know when to run. Nobody can abandon you if you don't abandon them first. If you can't escape your escape room, you can run off your ex-wife and all her friends that she said were your friends but weren't in the beginning. And you can stop replying to your mother, and you can keep not talking to your father, and you can keep complaining about your brother who killed himself 30 years ago, and nobody can ever tell you to grow up and get over it. And you can wait a year and throw your own escape room in a dark, locked apartment with no light except for 41 candles on a shitty sheet cake you brought from Koger's the next morning. And you can wish yourself a happy birthday and make a wish and blow out all those candles, and you can rip your shirt off and punch yourself in the eye and say, I am a man, I am a man. And when that doesn't work and you come crawling back to your therapist and he says, well, did that make you happy then? You can say to him, obviously that didn't happen. You should know by now that this is a textbook example of my overactive imagination running rampant again. You can cry and look him in the eye and say, what kind of monster do you think I am? Thank you all.